The first political parties, Chapter 8, Section 3. Opposing views. Most Americans in the late 1700s thought that the political parties were harmful. One reason for this was Washington's strong warning against them in his farewell address. He described how they would divide the country, how they would tear the country apart, and to just stay away from them. By 1796, Americans were beginning to form political parties, however. This was evident in Washington's cabinet with Hamilton and Jefferson. They were often on opposite sides of an issue. Political parties. They start to emerge into two distinct parties, which were known as the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. Both today's Republicans and Democrats can claim Jefferson as their founder, and they're both proud of that. In 1790, however, if you were called a Federalist, what that meant was you supported the Constitution. You wanted to pass the Constitution. You wanted to ratify the Constitution. After 1790, it meant you supported the policies of George Washington and his administration. Federalists, some of the policies that they favored were strong federal government. They believed that a strong federal government would make the country more powerful. They believed that a strong federal government would create a country that was organized. They also favored banking and shipping interests, which was predominantly going on in the North. So it definitely favored the northern economy more. They wanted to rule by the wealthy class. One reason that they thought that the wealthy class should rule is because usually back then the wealthy class was the more educated class. They wanted a national bank. They believed that a national bank would be able to create more revenue for the federal government. It would be able to create an income for the federal government through loans and interest rates. They wanted a representative government in which elected officials ruled in the people's names. They wanted, again, the wealthy. They wanted the representatives to be making the decisions, and they wanted the people to vote for them still, but they wanted the representatives to be the ones that were voting on decisions, not the people. They wanted a loose interpretation of the Constitution or implied powers, and the reason they wanted a loose interpretation of the Constitution is because that way they could do more with the Constitution. They would not be as limited by the Constitution. They would be able to say, look, the Constitution is implying that we have the power to do, X, Y, Z. We have the power to do what the Constitution is saying, maybe in between the lines. They wanted a British alliance. The reason they wanted a British alliance is because the British had a strong central government, and that's who they wanted to do business with. And they wanted protective tariffs. They wanted to protect the interests of American-made products. However, these products were mostly made in the North. The South was mostly agricultural. Democratic Republicans, they're going to be led by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. Some of the policies that they favored, they favored strong state governments. They believed that in a state government, the people would have more power, and it would keep the federal government from accumulating too much power. They wanted to spread the power out. The more people involved in government and their thoughts, the better. They wanted an emphasis on agriculture. They believed that agriculture could make America prosperous, and they wanted to not be so industrial. They wanted to rule by people, not representatives. They wanted the people to be making sure that their voice is getting heard and that they are making the decisions in the government. They wanted state banks instead of a national bank, government in which people could participate. They did not just want the wealthy class to participate. They wanted everyday citizens to be able to participate. Now, back then, what an everyday citizen was usually a white male. Women were not involved in the government at this time at all. They also wanted a strict interpretation of the Constitution. They wanted the Constitution to limit the power of the federal government as much as possible. They wanted a French alliance. The French just had a revolt. So they wanted to make sure that they're doing business with a country that is similar to their political system. And they wanted free trade. They wanted to do away with tariffs. They wanted capitalism to be able to work. So they wanted to get rid of the tariffs, and also they believed that the tariffs favored the North too much. To the left is Alexander Hamilton. To the right is Thomas Jefferson. And again, this just shows the two sides and shows how they differ for each issue. Washington's dilemma. He understood how Hamilton and Jefferson disagreed with each other, and he tried to resolve their differences. It's not going to work. Eventually, both men will resign from Washington's cabinet. Jefferson will resign in 1793, and Hamilton will resign in 1795. The election of 1796. This is the first presidential election where candidates were part of political parties. This is a huge deal. Again, they're going directly against what George Washington said not to do in his farewell address. During each respect party's caucus, members of Congress and other leaders chose their political candidates. The Federalists are going to nominate John Adams, and the Democratic Republicans are going to nominate Thomas Jefferson to be their representatives for the election of 1796. Adams is going to win the election with 71 electoral votes. Jefferson only received 68. Remember, however, at this time, the person with the second most votes became the vice president, despite which political party they belong to. It's not like today where the president chooses their vice president to run with them. President John Adams. John Adams served as vice president under Washington for 2 terms before becoming the second president of the United States. He's going to spend most of his life in public service. When Adams became president, he inherited some of the unresolved problems from Washington's term, just like all presidents do. This kind of sets a precedent, sets a tradition of that. I mean, each president is always going to inherit the problems of the former president. We're going to go ahead and stop there. We're going to finish the rest of the notes tomorrow in class. I will see you tomorrow. Please make sure you have all that we have done up to this point.